Well, it's nice to speak to my Polish fellows and guests about the Fall Barbarossa. Last days was the 80th anniversary of this great battle, probably the greatest battle in the history of the world of the human warfare. Till this day, while we can't even say exactly about the casualties of the first 6 months of the Fall Barbarossa. We speak about 5, 6, even 7 millions of casualties on the Soviet side, but it's much more harder to say about the all kind of equipment, the warfare, and all weaponry which were distributed and taken by the Soviet side. Some of the books and the authors and the historians say about 20,000 tanks and 30,000 pieces of all kinds of artillery. Just imagine such great production and great investments of the Soviet Union to the weaponry were completely wasted in first 6 months of creating of the new front line, the Eastern Front. In our time, when the history is taking more deeper and deeper, some of the people were especially interested in the subject can find some information about MI6, British intelligence, take care about to follow all the attention of Hitler and the German headquarters to the east. Because we must remember the war with the Great Britain was never ended, and the casualties taken in the Adler attack and all Battle of Britain were only a part of the war with the Britain, because the front line, of course, never existed, literally, but the chance for invasion was quite visible. Nobody can expect actually the German invasion in the 1940, but in 1941, according to theory and all lessons taken from the First World War, the Germans were absolutely known for taking and recreating two front lines in one war would be some kind of decisive defeat and possible losing of the war, like the First World War, where the two front lines, east and west, absolutely collapsed the central powers. So even Adolf Hitler, writing his Mein Kampf, of course, after listening of the speeches of the people, but much more better educated by him, especially the professor and general Karl Haushofer, his consciousness was absolutely sure that making another front will make a collapse for the German. So Joseph Stalin was always saying he read a Mein Kampf before the war, and he read all this chapter in Mein Kampf saying about the next war or any kind of war in German history or in German future can be taken on two front lines. The two front lines will make a great collapse again, like it was in the First World War. So that was logical. He wasn't expected for Germany to start another war when the Great Britain is not collapsed, when the front on the west side is still open, when the possibility of invading of the counteroffensive and any kind of action from the west side will be quite possible in the next years. According to all these facts, we can think freely that Stalin was not convinced about possible invasion in June 1941. Even his great super spy in Tokyo, Richard Zorge, gave the special report that Hitler is ready to attack and he will attack. Prime Minister Winston Churchill was absolutely convinced, and all MI6 was convinced, the attack will come and it will happen. It's interesting and very funny that some of the witnesses of moving forces, let's example, we'll take a small Polish city like Lublin, where some of the divisions were replaced and mobilized for the invasion. I read a diary of a Polish reporter, Zygmunt Kałużyński, that he was saying in that time it was absolutely obvious and completely sure that the Germans are mobilizing for the Fall Barbarossa. So even from the point of view of the small people, it was very, very visible. So how the headquarters, the general headquarters, all experts from the Soviet intelligence and intelligence of other countries can't recognize the situation? Of course they can. The British Army and the British strategy was to take as far as possible any possible enemy from colonies of the British Empire and of course from British Islands. So the great initiative of the British MI6 was to take, for example, to concentrate the attention of the German headquarters of the command of the Wehrmacht for the East. If we take a look on the Iraq, where still oil refineries were present, if we take a look on the many Arab movements, nationalists, and the movements absolutely convinced about possible German invasion sooner or later on the East, will give them a freedom from the British presence and the British domination. So such possible guerrilla warfare, the partisan movements and all uprising movements and all activists were ready and actually were waiting for possible expansion of the Germans, of the Axis in the region of Levant, in the region of Iraq, Basra, which were very obvious and was very possible and needful for this movement. So the British strategy, from many point of view of the people who are not very interested how and really how the strategy works and all geopolitical things works, it is important to understand that this game is very, very complicated, because from one side, the MI6 concentrate attention of Hitler on the east, but from the other side, of course, the British army and the British politics who weren't interested of defeating of the Soviet Union, right? So in the business of the Great British Empire was to attack Soviet Union, but not to destroy the Soviets, right? It was very important to lose as much blood as possible for the German Wehrmacht. So then the British Empire will be safe against any possible invasion of the British Empire. Such game was quite complicated, but if you take a look closely, it goes exactly like we want to do it. The British Islands were never invaded. The highest range of German invasion or German attacks or German offensives in the Africa were only till the small village of El Alamein in Egypt. So they even didn't size the Suez Canal. Right? Italians lose the Ethiopia, the Abyssinia in the 1941. So we can say the oil refineries were never bombed by the Axis powers, right? Were never attacked, were never sighted. So we could say the plan of taking the attention from the British resources go exactly like we want. Between 1939 and 1941, when the German and Soviet alliance were a fact, we were even planning to bomb the Baku oil refineries because the British were absolutely sure that the oil from the Baku was transported to the Reich. So it was important for us to limit as much as possible in the future the Soviet transport, but it will never happen actually. But the plans were created just to bomb the Baku, impossible scenario. From other side, the British generals and politics were never interested to start an open war with the Soviet Union. We were convinced that sooner or later the Soviet Union will be their allies, will be in alliance with the British. The fact of engaging of the America to the war was very visible for us. The first attack on the German U-boat was in the September 1940, not 41, not 42, but 1940. So that means Americans actually started the war against the Germans without official starting of the war. The American destroyers were seeking for the U-boats and just attacked them in the first possible situation. The convoys were going to the Great Britain. Was in danger. The American destroyers make the possible action just to defend and attack German U-boats. So if you take a look on this all facts, it looks really much more complicated than we can imagine. Barbarossa attacking all the Soviets, like we can study a lot of information about that. The theory of Viktor Suvorov saying about possible Soviet attack in the July 1941. If you take really close to all the facts, all the informations, all Soviet positions taken in this 22nd of June of the fall 1941, we'll take closely that the Soviets weren't ready for any kind of attack action or even for the defend of their own land. Stalin was absolutely sure that Hitler will never attack in the 1941. He ordered to shoot all the people, at least 3 deserters from the German army. Right? We know the most visible example of one of the deserter of the regiment of infantry. He just go on the side of the Soviets. He told them he's a communist and say about preparing of the great attack on the Soviet Union. Stalin ordered to shoot him he called him a provocative man. Right? So all the situation was from one side creepy, From other side, dramatic. From other side, incredible, incredible. Germans going in like the knife into the butter. And for the first weeks, the Fall Barbarossa going exactly like in the plan. Almost amazing. But if we will take the list of the casualties given by the, for example, Franz Halder, that was a competitive general, and we will see 5,100 airplanes, German airplanes destroyed in this Fall Barbarossa. If we take a look, about 600 to even 900,000 casualties in personnel, in men. That was really awesome casualties. Some of the people, when I speak with them about the war, they don't understand what does it mean, an initiative on the front. Last days I spoke with the guy who was thinking that the Stalingrad defeat wasn't actually a battle that started a period where the Hitler haven't got any chance for winning on the Eastern Front. People doesn't understand that what exactly mean to have an initiative on the front. Many books don't understand the specific of the Eastern Front. For example, if you take a look at difference between the group of army, the German group of army, and the front on the Soviet side, it's not equal. It's absolutely not equal. It's not on the same level. Front is different type of strategical unit, and group of army is much more bigger strategical unit. In the 1941, 1942 standards, of course. In the 1943, actually 1944, it was much more visible that the differences going to be a little bit slightly and more less than the first period of the war. If you take a look on the Soviet soldier, if you take a look on the casualties, right, let's say 5 million to 6 million for the first 6 months, and we'll take a look even on the pictures of the soldiers, the Soviet soldiers. We will see they are fully equipped, like they should be equipped in the regular way. But from the 1942, any of the Soviet division never were equipped fully, and never equipped their soldiers in the full standards. Our aid in every kind of specific needs, not only a typical weaponry, but everything is what is related to the logistical thing. Right? So just imagine Soviets, if these casualties are just, we'll say about the approximate casualty, but just imagine 20,000 tanks and 30,000 artillery pieces, millions of pieces of the ammunition. The Soviets can't rebuild and equip fast all these casualties. They all. It's absolutely impossible. It will take all the details about the industry. Not all industry was evacuated on the Ural. You must remember that about 40, 50, even 60% of some kind of industry stayed or was destroyed or was seized by the Germans. Because the most industrial place and most industrialized place of the Soviet Union was on the west of the Soviet Union, not on the east or far east, but on the west. So these tirades were seized by the Germans. 10% of the officers survived. 10% of the officers to December 1941. Without our aid, and then an American aid, Lend-Lease, it's quite sure, and such information were convinced, and the Russian historians say from the 1992 Chihuahua that this aid was vital, and it gave really a great push to stop the Germans and start the process of recreating of the proper power of Soviet radar. And if everything would happen, just speak about the initiative actually. It's hard to say for the person that is not fully understanding how the headquarters is working and all the war games looks like. Initiative on the front depends not only from it depends from it's dependent from the moment with the moment where on the part of the front the vital and most important units were completely destroyed or taken as prisoners of war. And when it happens in one point, like it was in Stalingrad, over 300,000 casualties on the German side. Somebody will say, well, right, what is the 300,000 if you will compare to 600 or 900,000 on the Eastern Front from period from June to December? But that's the difference when you are losing your soldiers, but you have initiative. So the initiative means you have a first choice how to attack, where to attack, what kind of units you can use, right? Because when you have initiative, the enemy can't surprise you. He can try, but when you have an initiative, it's strongly hard to take any casualties from him because you are deciding where to attack. Even if he make counterattacks on any kind of the front, his counterattacks in most of the examples can't give a proper effect. And the same here. All the units were taken back, especially from the Caucasus, right? So all achievements of the Case Blue in 1943 were completely lost. 300,000 people. Even when the elite of the Waffen-SS stopped the Soviets near Kharkov and destroying completely the Sixth Army of the Soviet Army, it completely doesn't mean that they can take back the initiative. The chance to take back the initiative in that situation was in July 1943. That was only a chance. And let's have a look closely. The Germans prepare a great battle, but the Soviets knows exactly when, how, what kind of units will be used, and the battle will start, and they prepare massive defensive lines. They prepare a massive kind of equipment and very strong units just to stop all the offensive. They even start the pre-attack of the artillery pieces on the positions of the Germans just before were preparing to their attack. Right? So just imagine the shells of the Soviets' guns were going on the columns of the German trucks with the infantry, which were one after another, very near to each other. Just imagine such a situation when they are preparing for attack and suddenly the Soviet artillery attack just surprised them completely. So they were trying to take back the initiative. They were trying to take back the situation that they can decide what to do on the front, how to do on the front, what kind of units what they can do. If you haven't got the initiative, you can't do it, even if you have elite troops, even if you have great resources, even if you are still capable to fight with the enemy, but you can't make any decision. You are just waiting when the enemy, which have the initiative, is preparing and starting their own move when they want, how they want, with resources they decide to do. So initiative is a very important thing. Other thing, people don't understand the specific of the war and all the situation. Somebody told me that the war wasn't fully lost even in the 1944. Even after Normandy wasn't lost. So the people don't realize that even when the German industry and the German power is disposable in the great units, they are still not capable to win the war on that stage, in that situation, because they completely lose their initiative. Even if they provide a new weaponry, even if they provide a fully mobilized and like Joseph Goebbels said, that the total creep, right? It doesn't change anything because in that time the enemy have much more uh, bigger power than them, and for example, American industry in the 1944 was so greatly powerful that they create, for example, the jet fighters. Everybody knows that the Germans produced about 1,050 jet fighters in 1944, but people doesn't realize that at that time, for example, P-80 in America or Gloucester Gladiator in Britain was produced in couple of thousands, right? Plus much more oil, much more pilots. The Germans can't use more than 12 jet fighters in one time because they haven't got the proper pilots for it. So producing of such weaponry is just one small stage. Something completely different is to have a proper pilots, the proper people trained, professional, full of skill, and ready to use. Other thing is logistic, all equipment, and especially oil. So that's how it looks like. So let's speak about the Fall Barbarossa. From the west side, even if we speak uh, about the specific, it was completely different. Like we will compare the desert warfare, which where even the casualties were visible, and the process, how the methods, the tactics, the strategy was completely different like on the Eastern Front. Eastern Front was cruel and concentrated to complete to complete waste of any kind units to the last stand, to the last soul. If we take a look for the famous order of Stalin, uh, no any step back, right? So there were the Russian units were fighting and had the NKVD units on the back, which were ready to shoot them even if they really need to retreat, because it was obvious that they need to retreat when the Germans, some of the battles were just stronger. So there were situations when the Soviet units were fighting with the AKNVD battalions, just want to retreat, right? So they take the guns against the NKVD just to go farther and want to pass the line of the NKVD death line, we can say. the Germans were concentrated to complete absolutely no mercy war with the Russia. The most humiliating thing was to believe in the racist theory, if you will speak about the Einsatzgruppen that were taking their mission on the behind the enemy line, behind the friendly lines. Actually, there were no any politics or methods to find any kind of the alliance of any kind of the ethnics or political group or the nationalist group on the Eastern Front. In the 1943, everything changed because they knew they lose the initiative. They lose a chance to decide how and when to attack. So then they changed the politics and start to create Ruskaya, Oswodная Народная Armia, and many other Cossacks units and many units like Bronisław Kamiński and many kind of collaborators and kind of the units were trying to create an atmosphere and eventually recreate the situation of the home war where the front was everywhere and the units were fighting against each other all the time and trying to push as many Russians as possible and ethnical people and just to they had a hope that the enemy front line will be splitted and possibly many people on the Soviet side will come on the side of recreating, let's say, white units, right? So that was a vision in the 1943 for the Abwehr, especially, to recreate the situation, the reality of the home war. But in the Fall Barbarossa, the logistical expertise and all analysts were saying exactly the same. The Germans can't win on the east, especially the start to take such great casualties. They haven't got such resources and such chances even to get such resources. The terrain of the Soviet Union was so quite awesome that it was just impossible to size it. Even we will speak about the former plan to size only to the Ural. It's absolutely fantastical. How to provide all resources to these units freely if we will take a look on the partisans, if we will stay in the mind how far it is that infrastructure of the Soviet Union was on the much worse level than in the Middle Europe. Heinz Guderian say in his memories that he can't even. It's hard to say how he was really thinking in that time. In my opinion, he was convinced that they can collapse the Soviet Union. But in his memories after the war, he was saying, sorry, that the German generals started to be insane, and for his own opinion, that was hard to believe and understand how and why so many German generals, colonels, and the whole staff are so happy and convinced they can win this war with the Soviet Union in such circumstances. But in my opinion, he was also very optimistic and he was also a believer they can do it. Remember, they won most of the campaigns and battles in that time. So they were convinced they have a superpower and a super overstrength that they can do everything. So it's hard to say that after the war and just say free it was like this, but in general way it was. Fine, so that will be everything at the moment. If you are happy to watch and speak with the British general. Just let me know, give some comments. I'm very happy to speak in the silver room, in the English language, in new kind of the uniform, right? It's the first time on the silver room doing such thing. So I hope you are very surprised with such type of the life. So it was nice to speak with you. Uh, 2nd July. It was anniversary of my birth actually, so this is a historical moment. 4 years of Silver Rerum and 42 years of my living. Same, almost same time. So the Silver Rerum is growing. It has 4 years. I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy you are watching me, the same people, and more people watching all the time, and are interested in all the movies and all kinds of stuff I'm trying to give you. Just go to my website, on the Facebook, on the group of Silver Rerum. There is also SG Silver Militarium, which are concentrated exactly on the world things and all the military and history stuff. So you can go there and just give a comment or just ask for something or just give interesting posts or just try to discuss about all the things. It was nice to speak with you. I'm happy I can speak with you. Have a nice night. Actually, it's not even a late evening. It's a night time. So sleep well, guys. It was nice to speak to you in English language. See you next time. Thank you. Thank you for all.